Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Live Free Now show, bringing you the news, views, tips, and tools you can use to live a free, prosperous, and healthy life. And today we have a wonderful program lined up for you. We're going to be joined by Joel Salatin of PolyFace Farms. He also just so happens to be our keynote speaker for the Exit and Build Land Summit 2. I very much would love to see you out there in person. There are still tickets available. You can head over to exitandbuildlandsummit.com. That's exitandbuildlandsummit.com, where you can check out the amazing cast of speakers that we have, learn a little bit about what the Exit and Build strategy and message is all about. We're going to be sharing more about that today. And you can pick up some tickets to join us in person. It's May 13th through the 15th in Bastrop, Texas. You can also watch online. You can attend day 1 and day 2 absolutely free. You just got to sign up over at exitandbuildlandsummit.com. But in order to check out Joel's exclusive keynote speech, we got something really special lined up for you. You got to be participating in day 3. So you got to have a virtual immersion pass. You'll be watching online, get all the workshops day 3, get the replays, some incredible bonuses. Or you can join us live in the flesh, in person in Bastrop, Texas. Like I said, there's still a handful of tickets available. We're going to have 450, maybe up to 500 people there. It's going to be absolutely incredible. But without further ado, let's go ahead and bring up the man of the hour. Mr. Joel, how are you today?
I'm doing great, John. It's a privilege and an honor to be with you. It's wonderful.
Awesome. So you also spoke at the first Land Summit, and you really blew folks away with your talk, and you did an extended Q&A afterwards. So let's just start by, why don't you share what Exit and Build means to you?
Well, what Exit and Build means to me is that we are more and more every day. Those of us that are thinking people, we are thinking disentanglement. How do we disentangle from the system, from all the things that are going on? And I love the Exit and Build themology here, because the exit is the part of anger and frustration, and we're frustrated about the way things are, supply chains, economy, COVID mandates. I mean, name your thing. There are a lot of things to be frustrated and angry about, but the whole idea is to take that whatever negative pushback emotion and channel it into proactive, into build, into innovation and creativity, so that when the culture becomes hopeless and helpless, some of us at least will have the wherewithal to help and offer hope when everything else is hopeless and helpless. So the Exit and Build is exactly within what I think is not only the emotional, but the spiritual, but the practical strategy for how do you deal with stuff when it's, when you look like you're heading off the cliff. You want to say, turn around. That's the angry part. And then you want to have a new direction to go. That's the build part. It's wonderful.
Awesome. Summed up quite nicely. And we deliberately choose presenters at the event that are living the Exit and Build lifestyle. And I definitely believe you are with the work you're doing in PolyFace Farms. But it's not only the food production aspect and the property ownership and building a community and building a business, but it's also, you're quite the rebel, and you sure do buck the system and do it like happily. A lot of people are like all angry and rebellious and get kind of ugly about it. Mm-hmm. But I think it's a lot more effective with the bureaucrats and with the general public when you do it with the smile and you're like, hey, we're not doing anything wrong here. We're just trying to live our lives.
Couldn't agree with you more. And so I think that as we head into the future, what many of us are looking for is we're looking for proximate, proximate living to an eclectic blend of skills, of people who know how to build things, grow things, and fix things. If you know how to build things, grow things, and fix things, you might not pull the plug on society, but you can at least withstand a lot more shocks. You can become a lot more resilient. And we've had the awareness of this, John, is really building. I think we're on the kind of a brink of a tsunami here of kind of awareness in the culture. I mean, even the Wall Street Journal is now having columns where people are questioning or even poo-pooing the notion of just-in-time inventory. I mean, just-in-time inventory has been the mantra of business now for 20 years, and suddenly they're replacing just-in-time with just-in-case. And so people are trying to solidify their supply chains, stockpile more inventory, things like that. So it's just in case inventory. I mean, that's just one little example of the kind of disruption that's happening within the greater culture. And so let's embrace that. Let's enjoy it. Let's be glad that some of us who have been on the lunatic fringe are and living in the ashes are actually getting Cinderella's dress and being asked to come to the ball. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, for sure. It's finally coming around. People are seeing the light, and it's unfortunate that sometimes it takes people getting really uncomfortable to understand freedom and understand traditional values and the importance of skills. Like you said, I've been, my business have been doing better lately, and so I'm like, okay, how do I invest to build wealth? And so, we bought some stock. And shortly thereafter, it tanked. It was my first time to ever invest in any stock. I'm a big Elon Musk fan, so we've invested in some Tesla, and it went down 20%. I'm a big firm believer in Bitcoin and cryptocurrency and been involved in a while, but still, like, if you got involved in the past 6 months or so, you're losing your butt off. And I came to realize, like, man, the best thing that we can invest in besides ourselves is skills, food production, supplies, off-grid technology, and building a network, really, because at the end of the day, no matter what happens in the markets or the value of the dollar or the economy, like, we can survive or thrive if we have that connection, if we have that network. So let me ask you, how long have you been doing the food production thing, and where did you get your start? What's the Joel Salatin Genesis story?
So my grandfather was a charter subscriber to Rodale's Organic Gardening and Farming magazine in 1947, 48, when it first came out. A lot of people don't realize that there was a huge kind of tension within the agriculture sector post World War II, whether we would go chemical or biological in the agriculture sector. I mean, many farms still didn't have tractors. We didn't have rural electrification on a lot of places until the late 1950s, and so people were still using horses and mules, and they'd been doing stable manure and things like that. And so there was this big kind of change. And so there were people like you and I, John, who were way ahead of that curve at that time. People like Louis Bromfield and Robert Rodale and Eve Balfour and Ed Faulkner and those kind of people who formed a little, a handful of prophets, or certainly lunatic friends, said, "Whoa, wait, let's not do all this chemical approach." I know there's a lot of them sitting around that are, left over from ammunition. Ammunition's made out of ammonium nitrate, potassium, and phosphorus. So we had all these stockpiles of ammunition sitting around that could be used as fertilizer. And they would say, wait a minute, well, maybe we shouldn't all do that. The soil is fundamentally biological, not mechanical. Of course, we know how that argument went. They lost out. And so my grandfather was an early adherent to that, that handful of mavericks at that time. And my dad got his, kind of environmental from him. But my dad had a degree in business administration. He was an economist. He did tax preparation work for people. And so, I grew up on the Free Man and, Mother Earth News and organic gardening. And I mean, I grew up in this wonderful eclectic household where, when people ask me, what are you? I say, I'm a Christian Christian libertarian, environmentalist, capitalist, lunatic farmer. And so I grew up in this very eclectic household where we were, conservative, socially, philosophically, spiritually, and yet all of our farming friends were hippie, dope smoking, peacenik, beaded, bearded braless, right? In the late 60s, early 70s, and I just thought that was that was normal, and it wasn't until I was older that I realized what a blessing that was to live in a household that bridged those camps. And so, we came to the farm here in 1961 when I was just 4 years old. and it was the cheapest place we could find, rock pile, gullies. And we came here after losing a farm in Venezuela, South America. Dad wanted to farm. Well, how do you farm? He saw the Latin America as the new frontier of free markets and lack of government intervention, and so he worked as a bilingual accountant for Texas Oil Company for 7 years, saved up enough money, bought a 1,000-acre farm in Venezuela in the 1950s. I was 4 years old when the junta of Perez Jimenez happened in 1960 there. And basically, we fled the back doors. The machine guns came in the front door. It was a time to settle, all sorts of interesting grievances. And so we experienced that kind of lawlessness and anarchy firsthand. And so, I'm not, I and a lack of rule of law. And so, we came back to the States and bought this rock pile of gullies and started over. Mom was a school teacher. Dad was a tax accountant, and off farm jobs paid for the land. So in 10 years, the mortgage was done. But the farm never earned a salary or really an income. When we started, Dad had a bunch of agriculture experts come, and he asked them, he said, how do I make a living on this farm? How do I do it? Every one of them, both government officials and private people like Dones, all their advice was, graze the woods, borrow more money, plant corn, build silos, and all that conventional stuff. And he knew, as an economist, he viewed the chemical approach as kind of a drug trip. You keep having to buy more and more to get the same kick. And so again, he grew up with a compost pile, and so he saw the biological approach. And so we started looking at nature and saying, well, how does nature create abundance? And it's actually not that complicated. I mean, nature uses animals. Animals move; they're not confined in buildings. They're integrated, not segregated. The three environments of open land, forest land, and riparian in nature are highly integrated, not segregated. So we bought a chipper. We began large-scale composting, integrating the woodlot with the open land, which then now we know, we didn't know then, but now we know that brought fungi into the bacterial pastures, which, is the best for soil development. And we began direct marketing. Dad realized, the money was in the value add, in the branding. And as a small farm, we couldn't generate enough, volume at a low margin to make it. So we had to get a high margin and wear all those hats of not only production, but also processing, marketing, and distribution. And so we did that. And then when I came back to the farm, September 24, 1982, full time, we basically started a business then. And Teresa and I lived in an attic apartment that we made in a farmhouse. You could call it an attic. We called it our penthouse. We lived on about $300 a month, drove a $50 car. And in fact, I got it for $50, drove it for 3 years, and sold it for parts for $75. So I like that kind of appreciation on infrastructure. And we devoted ourselves to a dream. If we didn't grow it, we didn't eat it. And she canned, I don't know, 1,000 quarts of stuff a summer. And that was our, I always said, if we could have grown toilet paper and Kleenex on a tree, we could have pulled the plug on society. We heated with wood. We had our own milk cows, and we basically lived just, outside the system. And now the farm has gone to where, we're now 25 salaries from the place and have a loyal following. And here we are with pastured livestock, hundreds and hundreds, thousands of tons of compost, and the gullies are filling in and the rocks are covered up with soil. And we've gone from the armpit of the community to arguably the most productive farm in the community. I'm not bragging there. I'm just paying honor and homage to a creation's beautifully designed template that it's our responsibility to mimic, not divorce or abuse.
Right on. That's great. And wow, it's great that you had so much wisdom passed on to you from your father. My son is definitely into farming and gardening, and I hope to, and entrepreneurship too, and success and wealth. He's all excited about money, which is great. So I hope to pass on some wisdom to him as well.
Yes.
Now, a lot of people, when we talk about this exit and build stuff, specifically exiting the cities, buying land, doing the homesteading, intentional community, food production systems, a lot of people's biggest hurdle or obstacle, which in many instances is a self-imposed limiting belief, tends to be money, right? And so when I think of Joel Salatin, I think of food production, farming, I think of business and entrepreneurship, community, right? And then of course the rebellion, which I definitely want to get into your rebel nature. But maybe you could talk about, you said early, you guys had some humble beginnings living in the penthouse, right? Can you talk about the struggle of making it on your own and maybe some lessons that you learned along the way? Because one thing that I've learned, I've been self-employed for 12 years now, 13 years now. And for the largest portion of that 13 years, I was completely broke and like getting the electricity turned off, and we got kicked out of our apartment, and it was a struggle. And I had 2 kids too. But because of persistence and believing in myself and some clever marketing, I'm finally finding some success. So can you share some wisdom with the folks that may be struggling financially and talk about how entrepreneurship can be a vehicle for independence?
Sure. Thanks for the question. It's such a profound question because our view of money and I would say as an extension of money, just material, really explains or manifests our value system. Show me how a person spends their money, and I'll show you what's important to them. And so so early on there, so a couple of principles for us. So we are not a moneyed family. We don't have external wealth, whatever. And so when Teresa and I got married, we didn't have a bunch of money, but by growing our own food, not going out to eat, not having a TV, living frugally like that, not having expensive fashion desires or anything, not going on vacations, we were able within a couple of years to squirrel away enough to live on for 1 year. And so we had that little nest egg of savings, and I realized at that point that I was extremely employable, and I wasn't too uppity. Even though I had a college education, I was perfectly happy to push a wheelbarrow of concrete, wash dishes in a restaurant. And it just struck me as we were trying to make those decisions at that time, it struck me that, if our nest egg runs out and we don't actually make it, I would be somebody's favorite partner as an employee, because I think I don't mind working hard. I'm not looking at the clock, and I'm willing to give 120%. And my first day on the job, my first question is not about retirement business benefits. It's about how can I serve you and help you to be successful, and as a business owner make money. And so with that, armed with that, whatever, you John, you mentioned your belief in yourself. With that belief in myself, in ourselves, and Teresa's capabilities too, we said, you know what, we can make this, we can jump off this cliff. We've got a little nest egg. We can go for a year. And if we need to, go back to something, we will. And as it turned out, here's what happened, John. Here was the big surprise was that little nest egg that we thought would run out in a year, it just kept going and going and going. Why? Because suddenly we weren't running to town. Instead of filling up the gas tank once a week, we were filling it up once every month. We didn't have to buy decent clothes anymore. We just farm clothes, right? You didn't have to wear. I didn't have to wear anything to the office. Coat and tie, whatever. We grew all of our own food. We had our own firewood for heat. And the other thing was that we were here for the slippages. I was here for every calf that was born. I was here when the green beans needed to be weeded, not, in 2 weeks, I've got some time off, I can weed the green beans. Timing is so important on these things. And so by being here, we reduced, not only did we were living frugally, but we also, reduced our, reduced the slippage. And those were kind of two things that we hadn't thought about. And I would just tell people, there's nothing about moving to a homestead that's going to fundamentally change your view of money. If you are not already trying to live below the poverty line, if you will, so you don't have to pay any taxes. If you're not already trying to do that, then there's nothing about uh, whatever you think you're going to build to change your life is not going to change that issue. What I encourage people to do is to start now, solidifying and affirming in your own life the procedures and the protocols. You don't need soft drinks. You don't need takeout. You don't need all. Start with your larder now. Shut off Netflix. Go, take that time and spend it on a farm. Learn how to, castrate a calf, or build a nest box for chickens, or tell whether a chicken is sick or not. Those kinds of things. Run a chainsaw. Dig a fence post. I mean, a lot of these skills are not organic or inorganic. They're just rural skills that that we've lost. And if the average right now, the statistic is that the average American male between 25 and 35 years old, so the average American male between 25 and 35 spends 20 hours a week playing video games. I mean, think of what you can invest that 20 hours a week in, from planting a garden to tending a hive of bees, to putting some, a pot garden. I mean, yeah, okay, a pot garden, but a garden in pots. All right,
There you
and
go.
if you want to do a pot garden too, that's okay with me. But there are some amazing herbal, these hanging PVC cyclones, with pockets in the middle to make an herb garden hanging on your porch. I mean, those kinds of things. Go down to farmer's market and buy green beans by the bushel and go home and can them, or get your freeze dryer, and crank it up with some local peaches and apples, and if you're not mentally and psychologically and emotionally in that space now, there's nothing about exiting that is suddenly going to anoint you with all the psychological, emotional protocol things to make you successful in a non-urban, non-monetary based system. You have to start down that road today, and be comfortable with it, so that you can leverage the exit as a build once you've exited.
There you go. All right. I like that. Leverage the exit as a build once you exit. Yeah, you just got to start living it, no
Right.
matter where you are in life. And a lot of it has to do with making decisions and deliberately acting in a way that's in alignment with your values, and also in alignment with where you want to go. So it sounded like you guys wanted to have a shift. So you decided, all right, we're going to make some sacrifices. We're going to pull back. We're going to pull back on some of the luxuries that maybe we took for granted, and we're going to save up. And that's going to give us this nest egg so we can then go start building. So I appreciate that. In many ways, it's like you got to exit the frivolous nonsense, exit your Netflix account like you shared, and the damn video games. I mean, come on, the real world is a lot more exciting than virtual make-believe games. It seems like a lot of like the old school masculine manliness of building and like carpentry and getting stuff done, it's kind of just been eroded in a lot of modern society. So it's good. Mm-hmm. It's good to see it's kind of making a comeback, and in some ways out of necessity.
Yeah, well, look at the popularity of Michael, Mike Rao, the Dirty Jobs guy. I mean, man, he is riding high. Why? Because there is a point where people want visceral interaction with their world, and when you disconnect so far from visceral touching, smelling, seeing, the practical foundations of life, if you're a thinking person, eventually you realize, goodness, this kind of levitating from my ecological umbilical doesn't work. I am anchored. I am dependent on something. I'm not in a Star Trek universe where where energy is limitless and money is limitless and nutrition seems to be limitless. It just comes out of a squirt bottle, and you start realizing we share much more commonality with our 1,000-year-old ancestors than we do with something on sci-fi.
Yeah, now everything's shifted into the metaverse and stuff, but there's still like we have a global audience, and a lot of people are like, is America the place to build? Or some people want to exit America, the United States. And, at the end of the day, in spite of this there's that expression, none are more hopelessly enslaved than those that falsely believe they are free. At the end of the day, there's still a nice independent nature in America, and there's still that foundational agrarian nature. There was actually a shift like early on. The Jeffersonians and the agrarians preferred that, and then the mercantilism kind of took over, and it became more corporate in the Northeast and such. But okay, so a lot of what you've described just sounds like some good old values, hard work, grow your own food, nothing controversial. But along the way, you seem to have found yourself in quite a bit of controversy and maybe even in some trouble with the government at times. So can you talk about when you started poking the beast, or actually when they started poking you? Because like you said, you're just growing food. You're trying to have a business. You're trying to provide for your family, create a good life for you and your wife. Why did the government have such a problem? When did you start getting this rebel reputation, and what was that all about?
Yeah, well, so when I got my first chickens when I was 10 years old. I got from Sears and Roebuck. I got these little chicks. I started my little egg business when I was 10 years old. I'm a big believer in early childhood, entrepreneurship. We can talk about that at another time, but I started these chickens. I started selling the eggs. I had neighbors in at church, and I started supplying a couple of schools. By the time I was 13 or 14, I had a pretty significant. I had a couple of hundred layers. I was getting 80, 100 dozen eggs a week, and so there was a Depression era leftover market in our town, Stanton, which is 20,000 people in Stanton. It was called the curb market, and it started in the 1930s when farmers were long on food and short on money, and people in town needed food, and so they started this curb market where farmers. It was kind of a precursor of today's farmers markets, obviously, but with this additional caveat. The additional caveat was that if the farm vendor would sign up with with the agriculture extension service. For women, it was the extension homemakers groups. For men, it was just to go to the extension type things. Then the food safety branch of the government essentially looked the other way and gave a pass. All right, it gave an exemption to basically all food inspection requirements for the farmers who vended at this curb market due to this internal kind of health department, agriculture department memo. And to my knowledge, nobody ever got sick. Nobody ever had any problem. This was all homemade stuff. I mean, it would make people at that time, people were making pies and custards and home butchery and all sorts of things. Well, when I came on in the early 1970s as a 14, 15-year-old, it had dwindled down to just two elderly matrons. One did baking, and the other one was a more kind of diversified homestead. They cured pork, and they had a big garden, and she would do baking as well. And then there was me, and I was coming from a livestock. I had my eggs. We had beef and pork. And of course, I had my old stewing hens. I had my eggs, and I had a garden, and we never did any baking or anything. So, I joined the market, joined 4-H. That was the extension, component that would allow the health department to exempt us from all inspection. We did we would process on farm, in the home. I would cook chickens in the kitchen, pick the meat off, sell it as pre-cooked, bone chicken, ready for casseroles and stuff. People ate it up like hotcakes. And so, this is early 70s, and we were literally about 20 years ahead of our time. And so then I went off to college. Nobody else in the family wanted to continue it, and so we shut the stand down. And very quickly, then the other two elderly ladies closed up shop too, and we lost that outlet in our city. So that by the time I came back and I'm ready to jump back in, we don't have that grandfathering in. We don't have that ability to access the market with value added product. We sold butter, buttermilk, cottage cheese, yogurt, all of this without any inspection whatsoever, and nobody ever got sick. No, it was all. We took responsibility for it. And so when I'm sitting here, I'm in college, and I'm trying to think, how am I going to get back to the farm? How am I going to have a business? How do I get back to the farm full time? And we always milked a couple Guernsey cows. I said, I know how I could milk 10 cows, sell the milk at supermarket prices, not mark it up because it's organic or grass fed or anything, just supermarket prices. I could milk 10 cows and make a nice living on the farm, milking 10 cows and just selling it to neighbors. Neighbors wanted it. Everybody wanted it. The only problem was it was illegal to sell raw milk. And so that illegality literally kept me off the farm for a number of years until we were able to off-farm jobs, save up a nest egg to where we could launch, several years later. And I've never, I don't harbor animosity, but I do harbor. I'll never forget the fact that the government kept me away from the farm, away from customers, away from being able to get good food to neighbors. The government got in the way of that. And during that frustrating time, I came to own the libertarian approach, and realized the government doesn't own me. When the government gets between my lips and my throat, I call that an invasion of privacy. We tell the government to get out of our marriages, get out of our bedrooms, get out of our sexual identity, whatever. And somehow, if the government tells me what I can and can't eat, that's perfectly legitimate. I don't get that kind of philosophical schizophrenia. And so that early thing, and then so. As we developed, we started with this chickens thing, and I started raising these chickens and selling them. It never occurred to me that raising chickens and butchering them in your backyard, selling them to neighbors could be illegal. So we just, we didn't ask, we didn't do anything. We just started doing it. And then lo and behold, about, 8 years down the road, we get a knock on the door from the bureaucracy. You're selling illegal meat, and confiscation and the whole power of the state came down on us. We had a fight on our hands, and so I dealt with it through our elected officials. We had a Democrat senator. This is state Democrat senator, and a Republican delegate. Both of them were equally helpful. The Democrat wanted to help an environmental farm. The Republican wanted to help an entrepreneur. So I was able to build that bridge. And we punched through that. And fortunately, I was on the debate team through high school and college, and had a lot of personal, as you said, John, belief in yourself. I had a lot of personal savvy and chutzpah, if you will, to take on the bureaucracy. And so we won those battles, and and we're thriving and in business today. But I actually wrote a book. Eventually, I wrote a book. Everything I want to do is illegal. There are a lot of things that we would like to do here that we like right now. Right now, it's illegal for me. I have 700 acres of forest, and this is Appalachian hardwoods. This is cherry and poplar and all kinds of oak and black walnut. It's okay for me to have a sawmill. And I can cut it into boards, but it's illegal for me to turn those boards into a chair and sell it, because chair making is manufacturing, and manufacturing is prohibited in an agricultural zone. In fact, it would be it's if you're a neighbor of mine and you don't have a sawmill and you cut a tree down and you want some boards out of that log, it's illegal for me to mill that log even for you, because there again, that's manufacturing, and it's illegal in an agricultural zoned area. So our apprenticeship program, we've run into obstacles. Our food program, everything that it just compounds and compounds. Every time you want to turn around, I mean, you almost have to get a permit to pick your nose or pee out behind the shed, and I'm sure there's a law against it. The fact is that we now have a plethora of regulations and laws that if you actually think that you're going to be successful and start by asking permission, you'll never get started, because the bureaucracy is geared to say no, no, no. And so we've found it's a lot better to ask forgiveness than permission. Just go after it. If somebody doesn't like it, they're not going to send you to jail. They'll just tell you to cease and desist, and then you can figure out where to go from here. But at the Exit and Build conference, John, I'm going to give numerous circumvention techniques so that folks will know how to handle the regulatory bureaucracy and be able to wiggle through a lot of these things so they can actually get some freedoms. There is a lot of creativity right now in this space. In fact, a fellow and I have started, we've now had 4 or 5 national conferences called the Rogue Food Conference. And our mantra is circumvention, not compliance. There comes a time when government overbearing and minutia intervention is so difficult to navigate that complying and getting a license is actually much more burdensome than just figuring out a way to circumvent the entire process. And so there's a lot of place in this space, and I'm excited to share about it.
Awesome. Yeah, and we're very much looking forward to your talk. You're giving a keynote speech on Sunday at the Exit and Build Land Summit. Like I shared before, anyone can register, get access to day 1 and day 2 for absolutely free. You'll be able to watch online, no charge whatsoever. You just got to register at exitandbuildlandsummit.com. We have an incredible cast of speakers presenting on day 1 and day 2. But day 3, we're going to take things a little bit deeper. All of the talks and workshops are longer. They're all an hour plus. And so the intention is to have fewer people on day 3. That's why it's a paid thing. And for people to go deeper, to be interactive. Joel's going to do a huge Q&A session like he did last time. A lot of people really enjoyed that, the interactivity and picking his brain with some specific advice. So definitely go sign up for a virtual immersion ticket. Once you register at the website, the next page will present you with the options to get that for day 3. You'll get the replays. You'll get some exciting bonuses. And there are still a handful of tickets left if you want to join us in person. All the speakers are going to be in person, except for one that was sick. But every single other speaker, about 29 speakers or so, will be in person. So that's definitely the best way to present. I appreciate what you say about the ask for forgiveness, not for permission. I actually learned that concept first from my midwife. Both of our kids were delivered at home, and neither one of them have Social Security numbers. This was controversial with my parents and stuff. And they're like, what if they need to get a bank account or when they want to get a job? And I was like, well, by the time they come of age, we're going to have our own alternative currencies and competing economies. And sure enough, we have cryptocurrency, and we have this whole big Freedom Cell network thing. And I'm like, I don't think my kids will work for somebody. I think they're just going to start off with entrepreneurship. We're already getting them started now. But there's this whole strategy that we subscribe to called agorism, and that's revolutionary market anarchism. And it's basically the idea that let's not work within the system. Let's create new systems. And one of the and it's you create new systems and you do stuff under the table. You don't ask for permission. And one of the maxims is you kind of weigh like, okay, what is going to be the cost of compliance, and what's it going to cost me if I don't comply? So, for example, if a license to do a particular activity or business costs $25,000, but the fine is like $500 or $1,000, you might as well roll the dice and give it a shot. So it's cool that these ideas, it's almost as though I always say that every action has an equal and opposite reaction. So the harder they squeeze, the harder they press on people, the more burdensome the regulations, the more it leads people to just doing stuff off the record, off the books, starting their own little farmer's market or whatever. Now, we saw this expand immensely with COVID, right? And for example, we have this Freedom Cell network of solutions-oriented people working together all across the world. Before COVID, we had 1,000 people. Now we have 33,000 people. So, Bill Gates and Klaus Schwab and Anthony Fauci, they're the best players on our team as far as recruiting goes. Now, that it's also the COVID thing really like showed us who our tribe was, because they're, especially like in the natural health. And I know that in your movement, there's a lot of folks that would be considered conservative or right, but there's also a lot of progressive and granola environmentalist types too. And it kind of revealed like, okay, the folks that are really militant about this and won't even come around unless you have a mask or vaccinated, they're not the kind of people that I want to associate with or do business with anyway. Now, I want to bring up and ask you about this article that you wrote here, because I was familiar with you for a while now, for many years. And when I saw this, I was like, man, you are really kicking a hornet's nest. So you wrote this article in March of 2020. That's March of 2020. And the headline was, "I want coronavirus." Now, this was really early on when people were totally freaked out and the lockdowns were in full effect. You say, okay, folks, enough is enough. I want coronavirus. I've been watching all the personal stories of the folks who have gotten it, and the overwhelming testimony is pretty simple. A day of sniffles, another day of fatigue, and then a couple days of recovery, and life is back to normal. You talk about how you have a great immune system, and then you say, if you're really worried about coronavirus, come on over to PolyFace Farms and roll around in the manure, which reminds me of my son. Like, my son never gets sick, and he's probably one of the dirtiest people I know. But why don't you talk about this article? What inspired it, and maybe share about some of the pushback? Because I've been a victim of the mob. People have been canceled for saying less than this. So what inspired you to write that, and what happened as a result of it?
Well, look, again, I'm a liberty. I'm a freedom. I'm a freedom lover. And listen, for me, is when the governor of Virginia shut down all the farmers markets because they were unnecessary and super spreaders, but kept open all the ABC stores, Costco, and Walmart. And meanwhile, we were losing. We were supplying about 50 restaurants. Most of them were sit down family style restaurants, not fast food, and all of them went out of business. And McDonald's flourished. Man, there's something wrong here, and I disagreed with the whole immunity. I believe that the immune system is like a muscle, and you're probably familiar with the hygiene hypothesis that many medical doctors have signed on to. In fact, it goes clear back to Thomas Friedman's Guns, Germs, and Steel, right? When he talked about guns, germs, and steel, the ascendancy of civilizations. And he pointed out that one of the things was germs, and the key to the germs was proximate living to domestic livestock. And so when you couple that with the hygiene hypothesis that we're, antimicrobial soap and we're trying to sterilize everything, and, raw milk is illegal, but Coca-Cola is perfectly legal. You begin to realize that our entire culture has bought into the germ theory that immune function can't actually be built. And so my whole point here was saying, look, instead of being paranoid and fearful and isolating and masking, and I mean, this is before the vaccine, right? And all that stuff. Instead, let's see how to build our immune systems. Let's get busy building our immune systems. Finland leads the world on this. They've actually got reams and now of duplicated studies showing that the illness rate among children that grow up on farms out in barns and with cows and sticking manure fingers into their mouths, that their sickness rate is way less than their urban counterparts who never encounter a visceral participatory connection with ecology. And so, uh, and so my whole point in writing this was to say, hey, folks, let's put instead of all of our energy in fear, let's put all our energy in faith, and let's build our immune systems. Let's get some microbes in our bodies, and let's just hit this thing head on with a great big smile, and embrace it, and just punch through it. Let's go on. And that was my whole goal. Well, as you as you can imagine, it awakened a fire. I mean, the Washington Post called, who is this crazy person? And I mean, we got canceled. We lost customers. The local newspaper said, the farm is a misinformation, all that stuff. And so the pushback was real. And as it turns out, my position has not changed one iota from that day. In fact, I would say that how things have actually progressed indicate that I was actually more right than wrong. Now, have people died? Have people? Yes, there have been, but how much of this would have happened anyway? Comorbidity. I mean, we don't the data, the deaths and all that have been attributed to this. John, I'm sorry, I don't believe any of the statistics. I just don't believe any of it. I mean, when we have nurses coming into the sales building, and hospitals were changing. I mean, when they got paid. I mean, have you ever heard of a hospital getting extra payments for certain kind of things? Boy, if you have people coming in with a broken right leg, we'll pay you another $10,000. Well, guess how many people would have broken legs, coming into the hospital? I mean, this was like winning the lottery. And we had people on the inside that were feeding us direct stories about, the nurses were finagling the numbers, and none of the data was accurate. I still don't believe any of the data. I just, short of being a tinfoil hat, I don't want to go clear off the deep end, but I just don't believe much of any of it. And now with the Omicron variant, I mean, at our farm last week, we just had Del Bigtree, who did the movie, the documentary Vaxxed, and he put his career on the line and got canceled by everybody. And he told me now that as far as he can tell from the experts he's talking with, not a single person who's getting the Omicron variant, not a single person has gotten that who was not vaccinated. In other words, non-vaccinated people are not getting the Omicron. The only people getting Omicron are people who are vaccinated. And so, you start seeing that and you realize, wow, we were more right than wrong. We weren't right about everything, but we were certainly more right than wrong. Even early on, those of us who said, let's take a different approach to this. What if Fauci walked up tomorrow and said, okay, everybody, here's what we're going to do. We're going to forget the vaccines. We're going to forget the masks. We're going to forget all the protocols. Here's what we're going to do. We're going to spend 1 month building our immune system. So here's what we're going to do. We're not going to eat any junk food for a month. We're going to cook from scratch. Know your farmer, know your food, get real food, grass finished beef, no GMOs, no chemicals, whatever. We're going to cook from scratch and eat that. We're not going to eat any high fructose corn syrup drinks for a month. We're going to drink a half a gallon of water a day. All Americans are dehydrated, so we're going to drink half a gallon of water a day. We're going to get in the sun for 20 minutes a day. We're going to work up a sweat for 20 minutes a day to move and get our body going. We're going to get 8 hours of sleep a night. We're not going to stay up watching, Netflix, playing video games, but we're going to get 8 hours of sleep every night. We're going to, what else are we going to do? We're going to make a list. We're going to make a list of all the people that you hate and forgive them. We're going to get that. We're going to wipe that out of our bodies and our system. Okay. And what if we actually as a culture, embrace that kind of thing. You know, oh, here's another one. We're not going to watch but 1 hour of news a week, and instead we're going to watch 5 hours of comedy. I want everybody to just laugh their heads off for a week. You know, laughter doeth good like a medicine. And
Yeah.
and I think Zach Bush, if you know Zach Bush, he would say one other one. He would say, "Let's not run to our rooms. Let's find 2 people to hug for 5 minutes a day, and tell them that we love them and we encourage them." And if you know, we didn't do any of that stuff, and yet all of us know intuitively that every one of those items helps to build your immune system. But there was no national bully pulpit, you know, encouraging that. There was no effort to do that, and so somebody had to say, offer a different approach, a different policy. So I did that, and there we are, and I'm on record, and I think history is going to prove me more right than wrong.
I think it already has, and the comments are definitely lighting up. Preach it, brother Joel, aka Crazy Talk in the mainstream realm. Yes, Joel. The truth is hard to disseminate. This guy is on fire. Somebody dropped some little sheeps here, I guess, or maybe some goats. Oh, that's the goats. They're calling it the greatest of all time. Somebody said that earlier too. You know, it's in the beginning, what's that? There's this expression about patriotism. It's like patriotism's in the beginning, the patriot's like a lonely man or something. And people finally come around when it's popular, right? But the folks that were preaching the truth early on, you know, a lot of people paid the price. But at the same time, I get so many people, again, we're talking about exit and build. And one thing that I try to do is try to recognize what's holding people back. And there's so many people that feel alone and isolated.
Yes.
In my view, because I go to the festivals, I go to the events, we put on these conferences, nothing could be further from the truth. This movement of free people that see through the lies and that are ready to build something better, there's a lot of us out there. So let me ask you this. In your experience, how important is it to stick to your guns, to hold to your conviction, even though it may be unpopular, even though it may be challenging? How has that played out for you?
Yeah, well, it has played out to me magnificently. I mean, so we've had our battles, we've been canceled, but I can tell you, coming out on this side, the you know, the affirmation and I agree with you, John, that the tribe, our tribe is becoming more confident. It's becoming more confident and more courageous by the day, because every day, you know, different outlets and different things are verifying what we've been saying. And so what happens is, as you start to opt out, I'll give you an example of this. This might just help to clarify it. When we first started and people were coming out to the farm, and we got a little bit of media publicity in the in the 1980s. You know, here's a young family, they're trying to make a living on a farm, doing it without chemicals, you know, direct marketing to their neighbors, you know, that sort of thing. And it was a warm, fuzzy, feel good, you know, it was a great little media, you know, interest story. And so people started coming out, visiting the farm. And at that time, everybody who was coming was pretty much a liberal, tree hugging, you know, big government, you know, kind of, you know, the hippy dippy, socialist kind of person. And it was fine. We were not that, but we didn't make a big deal of it. We hugged everybody. We embraced it all. It was good. Well, then in the late 80s and early 90s, actually more in the mid 90s, late 90s, suddenly the homeschool movement, something seemingly completely unrelated, homeschooling took off. I mean, you know how it took off. We were early adherents to homeschooling. We were homeschooling. You know, you closed the blinds. You didn't ask. You didn't tell. You didn't, you know, say anything, because at that time, you know, truant officers would come and take your kids out of the home for you being, you know, negligent parents. Because you were homeschooling. So that's when we started. Well, then came Homeschool Legal Defense Association, Michael Ferris, and it just exploded there in the 90s. Well, suddenly the visitors to the farm were suddenly, instead of being, you know, 90% kind of, you know, liberal, socialistic, environmentalist, you know, tree huggers, suddenly 50% of them were conservative, homeschool, Bible believing kind of people. So what's going on here? And what's going on here was that these homeschoolers opted out of one thing. They picked one thing in their life. They picked one hot button in their life and said, that's enough. I'm gonna opt out. I'm gonna exit. I love your terminology, John. I'm gonna exit this one thing, and I'm gonna build something different. And I get chill bumps talking about this, because what happened was, it was so satisfying. It was liberating. It was affirming that they started looking, wow, well, what else have I missed? Maybe I should change where I invest my money. Maybe I should change my diet. Maybe I should change, different things. Okay. My recreation, whatever, my vacation. All right. And so what happened was, the next step was, suddenly these people were, they were getting backyard chickens, and they were, they got a little food mill on their counter, and they were buying wheat. They didn't buy, white bread. They bought bushels of wheat and ground it and made sourdough. And they had sourdough starter, in their kitchen, and a little, mung bean sprout jar in the windowsill, making mung bean sprouts. And what happens is that a little bit of liberation and success in owning your life is intoxicating. It's intoxicating, and you immediately want to ask, so what else? What else can I exit and build in? And so that was our experience, and it certainly is our experience today. And so rather than sitting here and losing losing emotional energy on the people that don't get it. What's wrong with those people? Why can't they see? You can get ulcers, worrying about the people that don't get it. Instead, forget about that. We don't try to sell food to people that are at McDonald's. We don't go walk into the gas station and say, you shouldn't eat this food, you should buy it. No. They made their decisions. Okay, our whole deal is to massage, caress, uplift, uphold, and affirm, and inspire the people who are interested in exiting and want to build something new. You can say that's preaching to the choir or whatever. Well, let me tell you, the choir burns out too, and all of us. It's a lonely life out here. When you swim against the stream, it's lonely. You suffer burnout. You start to question, am I the only one? You have all these self-doubts and things coming in. So there is nothing wrong with throwing our encouragement into that space that people are already starting to embrace, and helping them to move to the next level.
Right on. And that's exactly why we are hosting this Exit and Build Land Summit. Again, Joel will be presenting on Sunday, delivering a keynote speech. We're super excited to hear what he has to say. It was a huge hit at the first summit we did in November, and he just went on and on and on, and we were gobbling it all up, and you did a really extensive Q&A. People really appreciated getting to pick your brain. So for folks that are on the fence with going to the summit, you host a lot of events. You said you do the Rogue Food Conference. Why do you think it's important for people to get out and show up, or even stream online? Why do you think that's important for people in their exit and build journey?
Well, because you're not getting it from CNN, and so at the end of the day, we need ideas. We all live in our silos. We're all limited by our, by what influences, by what comes into our lives. And so there is a magic that happens when you fellowship. And I love the word fellowship. Yes, I am grateful for every person that joins us electronically, but and I know, John, there is nothing like fellowshipping together, rubbing shoulders, feeling each other's energy, interacting personally with each other. And I would even suggest there is a positive immune builder in breathing each other's air and breath and touching each other and shaking hands and being in a room together where where we're mixing all of our, exudates, and that's exercising our immune systems. There's a lot of seen and unseen advantages of being physically present, and if that's not possible, then certainly being electronically present, but being encouraged, encouraged, because most of us, James Dale Davidson, when he wrote The Sovereign Individual back, 35 years ago, he pointed out that as this whole as the culture progresses the way he saw it, he said we're going to actually be much better friends with people who think like us than people who share our genetic DNA. And I think that's absolutely true. We are creating a new tribalism, and most of us are better friends with people in our worldview tribe than we are our actual families. The nitwits we got to spend Christmas with, and this, if you want to make progress, if you want to go forward. Few things can facilitate that and catalyze you to a next step better than either electronically or personally spending time in space with people in your tribe.
Right on. Excellent. Very nicely put. And again, you'll be able to join us, ideally in person, shake some hands, meet some new friends, find some people to exit and build with, to further your plans, to further your community. We're all a great big tribe, and I'm super grateful to be part of your tribe, and I'm glad that you're part of our tribe, Mr. Salatin. So again, folks can get tickets at exitandbuildlandsummit.com, exitandbuildlandsummit.com. Well, Joel, thank you so much for joining us. I really appreciate you taking time out of your busy day, and we're really excited to see you here in just about 4 days or so.
Yeah, it won't. As the monkey said when he got his tail stuck in a meat grinder, it won't be long now. So we're looking forward to it, and I hope it fills right up, and then I know we're going to have a great time.
All right. Okay, great. Well, we'll be talking to you soon. Thanks again, Joel. Stay free out there.
All right, John. Thank you.
All right, there you have it, ladies and gentlemen. The one, the only Joel Salatin, the rebel, lunatic, Christian, environmentalist. You name it, he's a good man, and we're super excited to have him on board with the Exit and Build Summit and also the Exit and Build movement. So if you haven't gotten your tickets yet, please go to exitandbuildlandsummit.com. There's going to be hundreds and hundreds of us. We are going to max out the space that we have here in Bastrop, Texas, just right down the road from where I'm broadcasting today. The Bastrop Convention Center. Again, it's taking place May 13th to the 15th. May 13th to the 15th. You can watch day 1 and day 2 with an incredible cast of amazing, inspirational doers and solutionaries. You can watch it completely for free. You just got to register at exitandbuildlandsummit.com. Or you can join us with the virtual immersion pass. That'll give you access to all the in-depth workshops on day 3. We're going to hear from Joel Skousen, strategic relocation. You'll be able to ask him specifically about your plans, your location, also home defense. Marjorie Wildcraft is going to teach us how to grow more than half of your food in your backyard with less than an hour a day, maybe less than an hour a week. We're going to hear from all sorts of incredible people going in depth, providing you with the path, with the blueprint, with specific strategies that you can implement in your life. And then Joel Salatin's going to be closing us down with the keynote speech Sunday evening before we go to our little after party. So you can get that day 3 with the virtual immersion pass. You'll also get access to the replays. So if you can't watch live, or if you can't see everything live, or if something just blows your mind so much that you want to go back and revisit it over and over again to make sure that you have it imprinted in your consciousness, you'll have lifetime access to the replay. Plus you'll get digital downloads to watch it on any device. Please. Also, with the virtual immersion pass, we got some incredible bonuses. The entire replay of the last summit we did, the first summit in November, in addition to our Exit and Build Life Design Workshop. That's 13 hours that you'll spend with me, all about building a life of purpose, of freedom, of abundance, of prosperity, taking action in your life in order to exit the systems that aren't serving you and build a better life. That's the virtual immersion pass. You'll need that to access the day 3 workshops and Joel's exclusive speech. Very much looking forward to that. And like I said, there's still some tickets left, although very few. to join us in person May 13th to the 15th here in Bastrop, Texas. You can fly into Austin. We're about 20-30 minutes just east on Highway 71. And there's just a couple, literally a handful of VIP tickets left where you can sit down and enjoy dinner with Joel and pick his brain. We are super excited to have you guys joining us on this program. Super excited for those of you that are registered for the summit. No matter how you're watching, we're really grateful that you're going to be attending. This is why we do this work. We are transitioning away from the old centralized, decadent, corrupt, coercive society, and we are building a new world, a world that is more in alignment with our values, more in alignment with our nature as free, powerful, beautiful human beings. And we're building the institutions, the infrastructure, and the systems that will enable future generations to come to enjoy freedom that we never thought possible. It's all exit and build. That's what it's all about. All right, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for tuning in. Peace and freedom. John Bush, I'm out.